page 531. But because you do make yourselves imaginations which are always wrong and bring disappointments, you also try to explain your own free will through an erroneous imagination that is based therein, that a Gestalt-based construction of your brain forces your space and time-bound intellect and the rationality to push the thoughts and feelings in any distinct direction and to determine them. This, however, is a heavy weighing confoundedness, and in no wise corresponds to your free will, but rather is a self-thought-up wrong machination of your not understood will, which is bound to your inadequate intellect and to the inadequate rationality. This grave confoundedness creates great erroneous assumptions and builds up a wall against the truth, which makes a recognizing and realizing of the same impossible for you, and that you, therefore, also find gaps and contradictions while searching for your free will, and are not able to bring logicalness, i.e. logic, into the whole, that surprises you tremendously and closes off your intellect and the rationality. Your free will is truthfully, exceedingly drastically connected with the fine fluidal world of the nature of your individuality, which you are capable of forming yourselves and upon which your will puts its stamp. Your free will stands in direct connection with your consciousness, and therewith also with your thoughts and feelings, and consequently also with your brain, as well as with the fine fluidal realm. Were you not to always grant the suzerainty, i.e. the higher ruling, only to your material intellect and to the therewith connected rationality in an unrestricted wise, but were also to use the core of your true inner nature, which is connected with your own fine fluidal side, then you would be able to recognize your free will and control it consciously. And were you to use and control your free will consciously, then you would recognize the fine fluidal of the core of your inner nature as your real ego, and thus fundamentally determine everything yourselves in complete freedom and in a fully conscious wise, and absolutely free of any influences. And this self-determination alone is the crucial factor of your free will. And if you use your self-determination, i.e. your free will, then you will not live in that bound will which, to execute all material purposes, is bound to the earthly space and time, and which is determined through your life mode, life circumstances, the norms of the society, through requirements, wishes, desires, and orders of the fellow human beings, as well as through laws and ordinances, etc. The bound will is that which is not self-created, but which affects you through external, material influences, and suppresses your own free will, and does not let it come to fruition. And this is why you then assume that you do not have your own free will. But if you live with it by only following your bound will, then you do not consciously determine your destiny in the wise that it solely and exclusively comes from you and is formed by you, but instead you determine it by acquiring external influences and bending to the bound will that is having an effect on you and bringing about in this kind and wise your destiny yourselves. Of course, this explanation does not lead to a true comprehension concerning your free will as human beings, because in order to really understand it, it is necessary to know what the free will is fundamentally based on, and the reason for that is anchored in the creational laws and recommendations, which are laid out solely on the determination of effects in accordance with the causal law of cause and effect. These laws and recommendations, which are formed in fairness and are not determining in what you as human beings shall do or refrain from doing through them, as a result of which you would be without free will and determiningly controlled through them. Because to the contrary, they do not determine any of your thoughts, feelings, deeds, and actions, but instead let you determine and decide over them in every respect yourselves, and hence in accordance with your own free will. What is pre-given through the laws and recommendations of the creation are only the effects, namely that certain causes bring about certain effects. Thus, it is only laid down through the laws and recommendations that certain thoughts, feelings, actions, deeds, and modes of functioning as cause bring about, with absolute certainty, effects corresponding to the cause. In which case you as human beings, however, are free according to your own will to form the cause in the right or wrong, i.e., negative or positive wise, and hence bring about a right or wrong, i.e., positive or negative, i.e., good or bad effect. As a vague example, you can use your self-created laws and ordinances, etc., which are given to you in the wise that you can follow them or act contrary to them according to your own choosing, i.e., according to your own free decision and according to your free will. This means that your laws and ordinances, etc., are so formed that you can follow them or disregard them. And they are also based on cause and effect. If you follow them, you create therewith good, positive causes, out of which the effect of the impunity comes, and a life conduct based on the law following results, one that is rightful, irreproachable, righteous, fairness formed, and responsible, and therefore of a good and positive nature. If, on the contrary, you disregard and break your laws and ordinances, then that results in the effect of the punishability and a life conduct of the unright, irresponsibility, unfairness, and unrighteousness, which corresponds to an ungood and negative form. And whether your thoughts, feelings, deeds, actions, and your activity shall be good and positive or bad and negative is something you yourselves decide according to your own choosing and in the full possession of your free will, because also with regard to the following or non-following of your civil and criminal laws, recommendations, and ordinances, you are not forced to keep to them and follow them, just as is the case with the creational laws and recommendations. You just have to bear the effects that arise out of your self-determined causes, i.e., thoughts, feelings, actions, and deeds, be it in relation to the creational or your human laws and recommendations, i.e., ordinances. With regard to both the creational laws and recommendations, as well as your human laws and ordinances, you are free in deciding whether you want to follow them or disregard them, in which case you are also conscious, at least with regard to your earthly human laws and ordinances, etc., that the cause of a breach of the law or ordinance will entail the effect of you being called to account. You can decide yourselves, according to your own free will, whether or not you want to keep to the laws and recommendations of the creation or your earthly human laws and ordinances, because you are not compelled through them to act in the one or other wise. Thus you decide yourselves what good or bad causes you want to choose and create, and what laudable or evil effects you want to call forth. And you do this entirely according to your own free will, through which you determine yourselves your integration into the good or bad. As a rule, you are not able to recognize in what wise the very often many-sided entanglement of your thoughts, feelings, actions, deeds, and your activity cover the effects of your free will, because you only live in accordance with your superficiality and do not really perceive what fundamentally happens in you, and as a result, you cannot analyze your own free will, nor do you recognize, let alone understand it, which is why you wrongly assume that you do not willingly control everything yourselves, but instead would be controlled through cosmic or godly laws. In order to understand the whole of your free will, you must go back to the fine fluidal shell of your free consciousness and to the core of your inner nature, which form the outer edge of the substantialness into which the energy and power of the spiritual sinks in an impulse-based wise, transferred through your spirit form as well as through the creational laws and recommendations. And this is what you shall be striving for to perceive, because then you will realize that you are not at all what you imagine yourselves to be. Truly, you human beings of Earth do not have the absolute right to the glory of the life, because the right solely consists in you earning it through the evolution of your consciousness by creating in you and around you true love, harmony, freedom, and peace, as well as knowledge and wisdom, and leading your life rightfully, in fairness, conscientiousness, righteousness, and responsibility. And this also says that the whole of that which you assume in your incorrectly understood or conceived sense, namely that you are from the ground up true human beings, is entirely wrong, because you are true human beings only when you have developed into them. Fundamentally, you are only sown into the life as human seed, and as this seed you carry everything in you in order to personally, consciously develop yourselves into a true human being. But the prerequisite is given, that you yourselves create and cultivate the thereto required capabilities and possibilities in you, bring them to a high form, and not let them wither again. Truly, this process of the self-development happens in accordance with your completely free will and in connection with the creation of the capabilities and possibilities. And the entire process is tremendously big, immense, and completely natural in every step of the happening. And for this you are given the creational spiritual energy and power, through which you can, according to your own free will, choose a logical or illogical developmental process. So you decide yourselves whether you want to follow the logical, creational laws and recommendations or not, and thus want to bring down fortune or unfortune on you. But consider also, the logic is not absolutely fully developed, rather only in a relative kind and wise, and indeed because there is always only relatively absolute full development, because each development entails another development, each result another result, and indeed entirely in accordance with the law of the causality, that a cause brings forth a distinct effect, which in turn is the cause for a further effect, etc. You human beings of Earth, as human seed, each of you carries in himself or herself a creation-given spirit form, which animates you and your entire consciousness block with creational spiritual energy and power, and through which you are capable of taking in the cosmic electromagnetic life energy. And through the same energy and power, you are also enabled to create all necessary capabilities and possibilities in you. And each one of them carries in it a promise whose fulfillment will absolutely occur if you form everything thereto through your will, i.e., if you bring your self-created capabilities and possibilities to the realization. Learn that the high fine fluidal of the creation gets into the inner nature of your fine fluidal as energy and power, and from this, your own fine fluidal, it undulates into your consciousness and your body, through which you, as material human life form, also carry creational spiritual energy and power in you. And through the high fine fluidal of the creation, which gets into your fine fluidal, and out of this into your consciousness and into your body, you live and evolve in your consciousness, if you learn in a conscious or unconscious wise.